I will now call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Park Commissioners. It is September 19th at 2024, 7 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can we have a roll call, please, Mary Beth?
Commissioner Bendy?
Here.
Commissioner Bowe? Here. Commissioner Halting?
Here.
Commissioner LeDuc?
Here.
Commissioner Matza?
Here.
Commissioner Grau?
Here. Does anyone have anything to amend, add, or delete to the current agenda? I will make a movement. I will move to change agenda number 8 to our PMA discussion to agenda number 7.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we will do that. We move on to approval of minutes. I move to approve the minutes from the August 15th, 2024 regular board meeting.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. I skipped public comment. Is there anyone here to make public comment on non-agenda items? Come on in. You have 3 minutes.
Yeah, I was told I get to speak for 3 minutes.
Yes.
And no one gets to make a comment on what I say. So as soon as I'm out of here, I'm going home, tell my wife about this wonderful new concept and see what she thinks of it.
Good luck to you, sir.
I'm here to talk about, I live near Centennial Park. So does our daughter and 2 grandsons, 5 and 7. So it's a personal issue with me, but it's also it's a problem. And the problem that I'm talking about is the increased use of electric vehicles by kids. And I don't blame the kids. They're being given these motorcycles or the electric scooters. They go very fast, and they're kids. And it's not a question of if something bad's going to happen, it's a question of when something bad's going to happen. And I've heard that you people take this issue seriously. And at the again, it's difficult to solve social problems when parents are being stupid, okay? But what I would want you to do is put up very clear signs so at least people like me can point to the signs, and so at least the kids will know that they're breaking the rule. And when something bad happens and those signs are up, there's only going to be 1 lawsuit instead of 2 lawsuits because the family of the kid is going to be sued. But it's with signs, you can at least say that, well, we've done all I can. So you folks, which is basically us folks, won't be sued. So again, it's a problem now. In fact, I saw a kid out here on a motorcycle right now. When I was at Centennial watching my 7-year-old grandson play by a big tree, and I was pretty far away, there's a kid going down the path. And it was just, if Mikey would have, not thinking, moved over to the path, Lord knows how bad he would have been hurt. And it's only going to get worse because if Bobby's got one, then Billy's going to want one. And then Freddie sees that Billy has one, so he's going to want one. And again, it's a problem. It's going to be a growing problem. So like Barney Fife used to say, we should nip it in the bud. Thank you.
We appreciate you coming, and we are taking your issue seriously, and we'll be acting on it tonight. So good timing.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
And I'm sorry, technically, you're supposed to give your name and address at the beginning.
It's been so long.
Yeah, I did. I signed it,
You
didn't
signed
I?
Oh,
it.
you
Thank
signed
you.
it. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks. And again, I'm going to talk about this with my wife.
Well, we did. We were nice to you in the hallway. I told him in the hallway we couldn't have discussion back and forth. So, all right, we'll move on to report of park officials. President report. I just have one thing to report that Brian and I met with all of you one-on-one during the.
I thought we were doing PMA.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you're all helping me. All right, we're moving to agenda number 8, PMA bond presentation. Thank you. Andrew.
Thank you very much. It is on, yes. Yep. Thank you very much for having me here tonight. You all do sound like a very fun group, probably the most fun
Too much.
board that I've ever presented to. So thanks for having me. We do have the presentation in front of you. I'm just going to go over some features of the Park District's proposed bond issue. No, sorry.
Oh, in the packet?
Yes.
Oh, thank you for not printing a book up. Usually we have a book. Thank you.
So the first slide here talks about different financing mechanisms that are available to the Park District, given the type of government you are as a Park District. And generally speaking, there are two ways or two mechanisms that you can issue bonds and then pay them back. One is being paid back from your operating funds and or rollover bonds. Examples of this type of financing would be general obligation alternate revenue bonds, debt certificates, none of which the Park District currently has outstanding. So the more relevant type of financing mechanism that's available to the Park District are bonds that are paid from a separate property tax. And there are two general types of bonds within this category. One is referendum park bonds, and the Park District has the 2014B, the 2021B, and the 2023Bs that are referendum park bonds. And then there is this category of general obligation non-referendum park bonds. For example, the Park District's 2021A and 2023A bonds. They're also called limited tax park bonds. They do require a BINA hearing, which stands for the Bond Issue Notification Act. And they are payable from a separate property tax. That property tax is not authorized through a referendum. Instead, it is determined by what's called the debt service extension base, what we call DSEB for short, and we'll get into that in a little bit more detail later in the presentation. And for both of these types of financings, the maximum final maturity is 25 years. So the next slide is on the Park District's existing bonds. This is the outstanding principal amount for each bond issue that you have outstanding. You'll notice that some maturities are highlighted in green and some are not. The ones that are highlighted in green means they are callable or refundable or redeemable. So at some point in time, the Park District can actually refinance those bonds, the ones that are in green, for a lower interest cost if at the time of the call dates, interest rates are lower than what the Park District is currently paying on those bonds. The call date for each of those bonds is below, in the column at the bottom, below each bond series. So for example, the 2014B bonds were callable on December 1 of 2022. Now they are still outstanding because the 2014B bond, the interest rate on the 2014B bonds is lower than where interest rates are now and where they have been for the last couple of years. So it doesn't make sense for you to refinance that. You'd have to pay more interest instead of less. And so those are still outstanding. The other three bond series that have green maturities in them have call dates of December 1 of 2030, December 1 of 2032, and December 1 of 2032 again. And then the one bond series, 2021A bonds, those are not callable or refundable. So no matter what happens with interest rates, if interest rates shoot down all of a sudden and the interest rates that you're currently paying on those 21A bonds are much higher than where the current market is, it doesn't matter, you cannot refinance those for lower interest rates. The next slide is a graph of your existing debt service. So that takes into account the principal payments and the interest payments. The prior slide only had the principal. It did not include your interest payments. So you can see here on the debt service graph slide that for levy year 2023, which are paid by property taxes collected by the Park District in calendar year 2024, the total debt service is a bit over $4 million. And then the following year's total debt service payment is going to drop to, let's say roughly $3.2 million. maybe $3.3 million. So that step down or that drop off is creating an opportunity for the Park District to issue debt again so that the overall payments remain consistent from one year to the next. You can see that the total payments consist of both referendum and non-referendum bonds. The blue bars are the non-referendum debt payments, and the green bars are the referendum debt payments. So the next section goes into the actual proposed financing for the 2025 bonds, which will be non-referendum bonds. So again, they require a binding hearing, the Bond Issue Notification Act hearing. It is simply an opportunity for the tax base within the district to let the Park District know what their opinion is of the bonds. They cannot legally prohibit you from issuing the bonds, but it gives you the opportunity to hear what their opinions are. Non-referendum limited bonds are issued by tax-capped non-home rule municipalities. I know the city of Park Ridge is a home rule municipality, but we are using the term municipality here as more a general term for local governments. And because the Park District is a non-home rule unit of government, that's why limited park bonds are applicable to you all. And the total amount that you issue cannot exceed what's called the non-referendum debt limit of the district, which is 0.575% of your EAV. And the annual payments that pay back the limited tax park bonds or the non-referendum park bonds is going to be limited as to rate, unlimited as to rate rather, but limited as to amount, limited by that DSEB, the debt service extension base, which of course is now the next slide. So the annual property tax levy of the non-referendum bonds cannot exceed the DSEB. The original DSEB was determined in tax year 1994 and was equal to the amount of non-referendum debt service levied for that year. And it remained consistent from levy year 1994 all the way through 2008. Beginning in 2009, legislation was passed that allowed the district's DSEB to increase by the lesser of CPI or 5%. So the district's original DSEB was $1.129 million. And now, given the fact that it has grown since 2009 by CPI or 5%, it is at $1.597 million. So that is the total amount that the Park District can levy onto its tax base in order to make an annual payment on the proposed non-referendum bonds. So the next slide is the current DSEB graph. So we're taking away the referendum bonds from this graph, and we're looking only at the non-referendum bonds, which are subject to two constraints. One is the 0.575% of EAV in terms of the total amount that you can borrow, and then the second constraint is the constraint on the annual levy that your constituents would pay to pay back the bonds. The dark blue are the existing non-referendum bonds that were issued subject to the DSEB previously. And then the light blue bars are the debt service payments for the proposed financing or financings that would cover the next 2 levy years of the Park District's DSEB. And so the DSEB is determined by CPI, because I mentioned it's allowed to grow annually by the lesser of CPI or 5%. So levy year 2024 is going to use calendar year 2023 CPI in order to determine what your DSEB is for levy year 2024. So for 2025's levy year, it uses calendar year's 2024 CPI, which we don't know yet because 2024 is still ongoing. So we assumed 2.5% for levy year 2025. So we're assuming that CPI for calendar year 2024 will be 2.5%. It's currently right around there. It might change a little bit. It will likely change a little bit from that for the remaining of the year, but we're not sure exactly where it will be. So the idea is that every year or every couple of years, you would fill in 1 to 2 years of this DSEB and bring the annual payment of the non-referendum bonds up to where your DSEB is or will be. The following slide takes a look at two different scenarios. So there are two different ways that you can impact 2 years of the Park District's DSEB. One is issue one series of bonds this year that has annual payments for 2 years. The other approach is to issue one series of bonds that has 1 year's payments, 1 year's worth of payments, and then wait a year and issue another series of bonds that has another year's worth of payments. So basically, you would issue, the scenarios are issuing 2 bonds that have a 1-year term each, or 1 bond issue that has a 2-year term. Those are the 2 scenarios we analyzed. And you can see that the 1 issue bond that goes out for 2 years generates slightly more in net proceeds than the scenario where you issue 2 1-year borrowings. Roughly the same, almost the same, but slightly more in net proceeds in the 1 issue scenario. And when we do this analysis, we do take into account not only what your borrowing rate would be for each of the bond issues that we're looking at, but also what your reinvestment rates might be. Because when you issue bonds and you receive bond proceeds, you can in turn reinvest those proceeds and earn some investment return. So we take that all into account. Obviously, if you issue one bond and you borrow, roughly $1.6 million at once, you're going to earn more investment return on the one borrowing because it's invested for 2 years than the other borrowing where it's only going to be invested for 1 year because each bond issue is a 1-year term. So, and we also have to make an assumption in that first scenario where we have 2 bond issues. We have to make an assumption on what the interest rates will be on that second bond issue, which is a less precise estimate just because we don't know exactly where interest rates will be in a year from now. We are estimating the interest rate for this year's bond issue as well, because you won't know the exact interest rate on this year's borrowing until you actually sell the bonds. But we have a better estimate of what your rate would be for this year's borrowing. And we take into account issuance costs. If you borrow 2 bond issues, your issuance costs will be slightly larger than borrowing 1. There's some economies of scale by doing 1 bond issue, and so that all goes into our analysis as well. So largely speaking, it's roughly the same, but we do show a slight benefit to issuing 1 bond that goes out for 2 years. Then the last slide here is just a key timeline for next steps. So obviously, today is September 19th. We're presenting the plan of finance to the district board. The binding hearing would occur at the December 19th district board meeting. And the January 16th district board meeting would include authorization of what's called a parameters ordinance. So basically, those are the 2 main board actions that are required to accomplish this bond issue, whether you choose the 2-issue approach or the 1-issue approach. Then on February 11th, the bonds would be sold, and your delegates would approve the bond sale. And then on March 4th is when the bonds close, and that's when the funds, bond proceeds actually hit the Park District's bank accounts. Yes?
Interest rates just went down.
The Fed just cut
Well,
the Fed funds target rate by 50 basis points.
yeah.
What we saw in the municipal bond market is that interest rates actually went up since yesterday. And obviously, it's only been a day, and so there can be some time before the market really kind of incorporates what the Fed did. But the reason for that is because largely the Fed, the Fed's comments were positive. Inflation is coming down. The labor market is not as tight as it was, and even the loosening of the labor market is not having a profound influence on inflation because inflation is still coming down. So generally a positive tone. So essentially what that did for investors in markets in general is that it initiated a kind of a risk-on mentality. And so when a risk-on mentality is initiated, more investment dollars are targeted toward the equity markets. So you probably have heard that the S&P 500, the Dow Jones hit new record highs today. And that's because there's this risk-on mentality. When that risk-on mentality is implemented, dollars are directed away from U.S. Treasuries, which are are considered a safe investment. So when there's concern for a recession, concern for a weak economy, investors will direct more of their dollars to U.S. Treasuries, this safe investment. And the municipal bond market takes its lead from the U.S. Treasury market. So we saw in the U.S. Treasury market, interest rates were up by roughly 3, 4, 5, 6 basis points throughout the day. And in response to that, municipal bond rates were up, I think, around 1 or 2 or 3 basis points today. So not a huge move, not a significant move.
But aren't they signaling further cuts?
They are signaling further cuts. And so, I think in general, if I were a betting man, which I'm not really, I would probably say I would think interest rates will come down. That's what I think. But there are so many dynamics that influence what happens to interest rates. It's really hard to predict exactly what will happen. And I certainly didn't imagine that, the municipal bond rates would increase in response to the Fed's 50 basis point cut. But that's what happened. There's always some reason, some rationale behind why it happens. And I do think interest rates will come down over the next several months, especially as the Fed continues to signal that it will continue its cut rating process. But it's important to note that when the Fed makes changes to its Fed funds target rate, it's really only impacting short-term rates. Long-term rates that go out, now your bond issue is going to be 1 to 2 years. So that's relatively short along the yield curve. But 5, 10, 20, 30-year rates for both the US Treasury market and the municipal bond market are influenced by a host of other major global events that might occur. Obviously, inflation has been one of those factors for the last several years that's been on top of everyone's mind. But when Russia invades Ukraine, that influences markets. When major global events, the presidential election that's going to occur later this year, that's likely to have an impact on U.S. Treasury rates and municipal bond rates. So a number of different factors beyond what the Fed does with the Fed funds target rate.
Well, Andrew, thank you for your thorough explanation of our bonds and where we currently are standing. Really great working with Andrew and his team at PMA over the last couple of months. He's been really insightful in telling us dynamics about our bond sales and what we have going on. It's been really great. I know Karen has a great relationship with him and his team as well, but it's been a great journey. Tonight is a little sneak peek of looking at the budget at where we're going, kind of outlines what our capital bond proceeds will be for upcoming years. Tonight we're looking to get a consensus from the board if we do one issue for the 2 years or do 2 1-year issuances for these bonds. There's positive and negatives to both. There's factors that could affect it. You could see, if you go back to the proposed scenario page, the issuance through both PMA and Chapman and Cutler, their price is more if for each year. Rates can drop, though there's a lot that's going on. Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, though. The BINA hearing, if we did a BINA hearing for 1.8 or up to $2 million or whatever it is, it lasts us up to 3 years, correct? Right. So the BINA hearing that's in their next page for the outline, if we did it, it doesn't affect the issuance. So next year we don't have to do another BINA hearing. The only thing we would have to do is the bond sale, the ordinance, everything again. So the only step that does not have to be redone if we do the bond twice is the BINA hearing because it lasts us up to 3 years. That's right. So we're just looking for consensus from the board as we move forward for our next bonds for the fiscal year 25 and fiscal year 26, which then is levy year 24 and 25.
So I just coincidentally went and saw one of our financial planners today, and my husband and I had a discussion on the way there, and I said, this is what we're talking about in the meeting. Do you think the rates are going down? He's like, oh, heck yes, they're going down. So then we go and talk to this guy, and he talks about everything, and he thought they were going down as well. I mean, chances are they're going down. It is, you are taking a bet. So for
Yes.
$1,000, I would say we should do two. Because we're only saving $1,000, right?
Yes, according to our analysis. Yes.
Right.
Yep.
Andrew, when you calculated what was the maturity, what were the interest rates for both of these? Was it 4.5?
4.5%, exactly.
Right.
Yep.
So that's just my 2 cents. I mean, I'm not a market follower, but my husband follows a lot. And I mean, I know enough to know that they're thinking things are going to come down. So, but we're not talking big bucks here either way, probably.
Yeah, I think that's the big picture, is that both scenarios generate roughly the same outcome.
Historically, we've done one issuance for the 2 years. That's what we've done
It's
before.
just like the last 2 years, I think. or
Correct.
last 2
Most
times.
recently, yes.
But until then, we had done one.
One, yeah.
Yeah.
So it can be done either way. Right before we met, or when we met with PMA and Andrew and his team, we thought we're going just with the 1-year issuance for the 2 years to save time, make sure we know what we have, invest the money, capitalize investment there, which this doesn't really outline. We could gain more if those rates go up or down.
Sure.
But we are taking a gamble for $1,000. It's just, again, just a couple new ordinances that we have to push through for next year's budget.
So do you not have the money if you don't do it? Like, if you do it in 2 years, are you getting money early?
So yeah, you would get with the bond. You'd get, if we go out now for 2 years, you'd have that capacity of 1.6. If we did 1-year issuance, it'd be like 8.5, $850,000.
Correct. Exactly.
Because that's what's left in the DSEP. So you're maxing out your DSEP either for 1 year or for 2 years.
So why wouldn't we max out the D-sub every year?
That's what we are doing. It's $850 per year. So you're doing 850,000 times 2. If you do 2 issuance is 1.6.
I understand that, but you're doing it a year in advance.
Correct. Is that right?
Cindy, are you saying that, like, since the hill keeps on going up and we're doing it now, we're going to miss out on that?
No, I'm just saying it sounds like you're getting your money before you're allowed to get it.
No, well, so you're getting 2 years worth of your DSEB at once, but you have to pay it back over 2 years. The DSEB is a payback mechanism. It's a repayment mechanism. So,
Oh.
yeah,
It's not a limit.
it is a limit. It's a limit on how much you can levy onto your tax base in order to pay back the bonds. And so the idea is, are you going to borrow $1.6 million and use 2 years of your DSEB to pay back that $1.6 million, or are you going to issue $850,000 of bonds this year and pay back $850,000 each year?
The debt service, for example, from the referendum is spread out over, right? It doesn't all hit your first year.
Right.
So
Right.
It's the same concept.
Well, that's just my 2 cents, and like I said, I'm not a finance person, so if somebody else wants to weigh in. Are you saying that we budgeted to use 2 years of money upfront, or no? Or you're putting it in the budget?
850 would be for year A and 850 for year B.
Okay.
So it's not that we're looking to use it all next year.
All right.
We would invest it the same way we do, keep SC every month, right? So we
Yep.
would plan with PMA, maximize.
We haven't been doing a lot of investing, though, right?
We have a pretty big project on.
I know, but it's legitimate to say we haven't been investing. If you say we're going to invest it, are we going to invest it?
But we have all of
All of our
our, everything's invested.
all of our bonds are invested. There's cash on hand that we were
Okay.
talking about before,
That's
but
good
all,
to
but
understand.
yeah,
We
all,
just haven't been investing additional, we've been investing our
Correct.
current,
Well,
like,
the-
non-re.
But when things are on the treasury, what are they? When they are
matured.
maturing, we're not investing.
Well, because it's going to pay for.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is, will this money be invested? That's what I'm saying.
So when the money's matured, that means we invest the money. It came back. That's when the money came to us. So when we invest the money, mature date, we get the money back to us. When it not mature, so we have cash on hand that comes to us with the Oakton project, as you can see, we've been spending a lot with the current vouchers.
Right.
So we're catching up to where we thought we were going to be before.
Right.
So money's going out. Like there's a $2.2 million invoice we just had from
I
Oakton.
totally understand that.
But the money before that, before it hit our bank account, the bonds were invested, and then once those bonds matured or capitalized, the money came to our account. So we have some money cash on hand that might be a little bit more than usual, but it's because of the timing of the Oakton project and our vouchers weren't paid on time. But that window of what we can invest and beyond is slowly slimming down. When we get these monies, if it's 850,000 or 1.6, we're going to be working with Andrew and his team to invest it to make money on that money.
You don't have to.
The bad news is you can only invest in certain places. You have to watch out for the arbitrage problem on the other side. Declining interest rates, that's not an issue, really. But you have to watch all those things. And so typically it means we're only making a few dollars, not mega dollars.
Actually, so typically when you issue tax-exempt bonds, there is an arbitrage concern because if you earn more on the investment of the bond proceeds than you're paying on the debt service of the bonds, that's considered arbitrage. The IRS does not like that, and you have to pay what's called make a rebate payment back to the IRS for the difference above your borrowing rate.
We're doing that now, right?
Will be when it's due.
When it's due, we're keeping track of it, yes.
These bonds will not be subject to that requirement. So in these bonds, when you issue them, let's say it's 1.6 million that you issue for 2 years. When you receive that 1.6 million, you can invest it and earn more than the rate that you're paying and keep that arbitrage without rebating it to the IRS, because you will qualify for what's called a small issuer exception, which is when a unit of government issues less than $5 million of tax-exempt bonds in a calendar year, you do not have to worry about arbitrage rebate for a 3-year period. If you hold the bond proceeds without spending them for more than 3 years, then you start have to worrying about arbitrage rebate. But I would imagine the district has plans to spend that proceeds within 3 years.
These issuance would be spent within the 2 years.
Well, so from what I hear, you're recommending one issue, and John, you're recommending one issue.
I'm not. I honestly, I am pretty impartial.
Yeah.
To be honest.
And Karen, where are you? I mean, do you have a preference either way?
I mean, I think they're close enough where either way would be fine. I think John and I were thinking just one issue, so it's one and done, and we've got a plan then for 2 years that we can merge up with our capital asset replacement plan. But either one, they're close enough where there's no wrong decision.
We were thinking one issuance for the 2 years due to the fact less paperwork to do, get everything in, and then we take the gamble with the investments and make the interest there instead of waiting to see what happens. But either way, it's still, we know when we plan the budget, we have about $850,000 each year for capital improvement throughout the district.
Now, I will say that with the 2-issue approach, we don't know where interest rates will be next year. And to your point, most people would probably guess that interest rates will be lower. So from a borrowing perspective, that does benefit the district. However, from a reinvestment perspective, that's not as beneficial to the district. And so the movement of rates is somewhat offsetting to one another. I think what we really want to look at is the difference between borrowing and reinvestment rates. And I do think the difference between borrowing and reinvestment rates now is more beneficial to the district than it will be next year, because as the Fed continues its rate cutting process, that's going to, as I mentioned, reduce short-term rates, which are the reinvestment rates. And the arbitrage phenomenon that we can take advantage of now will likely be more muted. It might still be there in a year from now, but it will likely be more muted than it is now. So actually, now that I think about it, maybe it does make more sense to do a 1 year.
Yeah, I was not aware of the investment angle, so when you
Sure.
said that, my ears kind of picked up. So I'm okay with 2 if you guys think that it's easier for you with 2. But I mean, one.
Yeah.
One,
Yes, 1 for 2 years. Yeah.
Seems to ease planning.
I'm definitely leaning towards the one issue for 2 years.
For the record, we make less money when we do that. So.
Then let's.
Yeah, right.
We'll miss you, but I'd rather have.
All right, so the consensus is do one issuance for the next 2 years. And we will bring that back. You'll see it for the Bina hearing coming back on December 19th. We'll work with Andrew and his team to get the documents ready, and Karen as well.
Thank you. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you very much.
We always learn something. Every year it's good to have a, every 2 years.
Yeah.
All right, now we will go to
President's report.
President's report. Thanks a lot. So I just wanted to update you all. Brian and I have met with you to talk about executive director goals in August or July, and we presented those to our executive director John, and he's working those into the work plan for next year. So you're probably seeing some of them on the agenda tonight. I saw one. But so that'll be worked in for the goals for next year, and we'll be discussing those in open session. And that's all I have. Attorney Price.
The legislative survey is out from IAPD. One thing that a number of other clients have raised, and this may be of interest to those of you who are circulating petitions for next year, trying to reduce the requirement for the number of signatures. You're twice the school board and more than that over what's required to run for the city. So, and there's been a trend to reduce the signature requirement on petitions for everybody, including park districts. When the Fox Valley Park District went from being appointed by the county board to being elected, they only required them to get a max of 50 signatures. So if you fill out your survey, you might want to add that if that's of interest to you.
I think that's what our city council has. Yeah. Which is crazy.
But they're in a smaller area if you're just collecting through.
Yeah, at 2% of your
different
biggest.
Number of voters.
Yeah, but they're making decisions for our whole community.
Yeah, I'm just.
Anyway.
Facts, ma'am.
I know. All right. That's it?
That's it for me.
All right. Our executive director report.
First and foremost, I wanted to thank everybody for coming to today's Hinckley ribbon cutting. I know I wasn't here throughout the whole project, but it's a great asset for the community. I know that the Buildings and Grounds crew, along with the recreation crew, work really hard on making sure that that fit the needs of our community, especially with the baseball, football, and cheer association. So wonderful park. Thank you for being a part of it. Thank you for staff for arranging everything and also providing dinner tonight. So greatly appreciate that as well. If throughout my last Friday weekly memos, staff has been very hard at work with planning for the fiscal year 25 budget. Today was a little sneak peek with Andrew and PMA, kind of setting the tone of where we know our capital bonds will be coming in for fiscal year 25 and now 26. We will continue moving on with the budgeting process at the next board meeting. The next board meeting is 2 weeks from today on October 3rd, and we'll discuss the proposed tax levy coming up. So that one will focus strictly on tax levy. Karen and I have been working with PMA, Lauterbach, and Amen to put together an estimate on our proposal, and we'll have all information for the board to be discussed on October 3rd. The next one after that is October 17th. As President Grau stated, we will be reviewing the strategic plan goals for the upcoming year and discussing those as well. And then on the 27th, we will have our special meeting. We'll start at 6 o'clock. A little earlier, hopefully go to about 9, and we'll discuss both the operating and capital budget for fiscal year 25. Oakton is progressing very well. A lot has been done over there. When you drive by, it looks completely different. I drove by today. The parking lot in the front, they started pouring all the curbs. So you can literally see where the parking lot's going to be, and asphalt's supposed to be in by the end of next week. So a lot of things are changing on over there. We're going to be talking with staff as we've been planning for the budget and using our time towards that. We haven't really got much of an opportunity to think about our next tour dates, so we'll be circling with staff again and pitch it back out to the board, have another date of the tour of Oaktings. A lot has changed. I know that Margaret has been putting up pictures or announcements going on there, but a lot of information has changed out there. It's really coming together. Floors have been poured, the roofs are up, sides are up. It's just really crazy how fast it's going. But we have our next construction meeting on Tuesday. Staff will talk amongst ourselves and plan next tour. Also at the October 3rd meeting in 2 weeks, Ben Collins will be there. He'll be discussing at the board meeting the referendum that is being proposed for School District 64. So he'll have a little presentation at that meeting as well. And then I've been probably pitching the Trucktoberfest since the end of October in all my weekly memos, but Trucktoberfest is this Saturday at 12 o'clock. I know the Recreation Department has been working hard to make sure that's a great event for the community. Commissioner Bendy spoke up to me beforehand and saw the twinkling lights that the Buildings and Ground crew put up over there today too. So a lot of team effort going into that. We hope to see as many people out there as possible on Saturday.
Great. Great stuff.
Thank you.
Marketing?
Hi. My report starts on page 8 of the board packet, and I'm just going to go over a few highlights. Our annual printed newsletter will be mailed on September 30th. It contains information about the second session of autumn classes, as well as our annual financial information and an overview of our current capital improvement projects. So watch for that in your mail. Staff worked with the dance staff to design a new logo for the Ascension Dance Company, and a copy of that logo is in the packet. Our prpark.org website is accessibility compliant. We have UserWay software that's been installed on the site. There's a little icon, which you could see in your packet, that you click on, and then it pops up a menu. And from the menu, you can choose different accessibility profiles that are already built in, such as color blindness, dyslexia, or ADHD. There's some other ones. Or the user can choose specific adjustments, such as contrast, or turn on the screen reader, or hide images. I also noticed that the city of Park Ridge uses this same software on their website. So there's a little consistency there. We applied for an award application to the IAPD Best of the Best to recognize the district for our 110th anniversary, which is this year. So the Best of the Best Awards Gala will be held on Friday, October 25th at the Wheeling Park District's Chevy Chase Country Club, and the district will be recognized at the ceremony. We're submitting some different things like photos and that will be shown during our award presentation. And I just want to wrap up that the Friends of the Parks has their annual trivia fundraiser event on Saturday, November 2nd, and it's being held here at Prospect Park at the O'Connor Building. Tickets are $320 for an 8-player team. It's a really fun event, and we'd love for you to come if you're available. The funds raised this year will be going towards enhancing the Oakton project in some way. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Yes.
What does it do on the website when you adjust it for people with ADHD? I'm just like...
It was interesting.
Is
Play
it like
around with it.
focus?
It does. Actually, it creates a bar about this big that highlights just like that section of the site. And then you kind of move the bar up and down. So it like drives your attention to just this smaller piece of information. Click around on those profiles. They're so interesting because I was wondering too. The dyslexia one, there's this special font for people with dyslexia that kind of like helps you move through the word. Yeah. Yeah.
Margaret,
Yeah.
So did you win the award at the Best of, or you submitted it, or what?
This one is an anniversary award,
Okay.
so
Getting older?
it's a recognition. They wouldn't challenge us on whether or not we really are 110. I don't know, though, if we're the oldest district or not. I don't know who else is getting recognized.
110, they don't think you'll remember.
So you got it. Okay, that's
Yeah,
great.
we definitely have.
Good, you put the work in.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for thinking for us to win. All right, Human Resources Director Riker.
Good evening. a couple highlights for my report. We have 2 new full-time employees. Ed Medrick joined the park maintenance team. He's promoted from part-time, and then Lori Streff joined as the fitness supervisor. Both are started and are off to a great start, and we're thrilled to have them. A couple weeks ago, our HR team and payroll team attended an in-person Park District Paycom user roundtable, and Paycom is our HR, human resource information system, time and attendance, payroll, applicant tracking, all of that stuff lumped in together. So these districts come together to sort of collaborate, see what's working for others, and how we can further enhance, because park districts and the way we have all different job codes with different rates, sometimes that gets a little intricate with systems. So it was exciting for them to all come together. There's 26 agencies now that utilize it. And fun fact, Park Ridge Park District was the first one to utilize it, at least in Illinois. And the first roundtable ever that they had happened over across the way at hockey in their conference room with 4 other park districts, and I happened to be there several years ago, ironically, and here I am now. So sort of a fun little fact. So that was a great resource that we teamed together with. And then the HR teams are really excited. Tomorrow we are attending Illinois Park and Rec Association's first ever HR symposium. So we'll be attending that, where there will be some nice educational sessions for HR specific. So we're really excited about that. But I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I think it's great.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for what you do. All right, and we move on to finance.
All right. I will turn it over to Superintendent Larson.
Hey, excuse me. My report starts on page 12. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I would just like to highlight that it's budget season, and we are budgeting. There's a lot of budgeting happening, and I just want to thank all staff. I mean, not just the staff here, but just staff all across the district, especially April's team. They're just amazing. They call with good questions. Part of the reason I like this time of the year is I actually get to help them and, advise them, do research on things that they have questions about. So it's been really good, and everyone's been working really hard. Any questions about my report?
I mean, I just wanted to note that I think it's really great reading the information technology part about how the collaboration with the PRPD has significantly decreased the amount of incidents in the parks over the summer. I mean, I definitely think that deserves a shout out. And I also saw that no vandalism for August. So, woo.
Yeah. It's been a really great collaboration, and that collaboration will continue. It's been a win for everybody.
That's great. And I commented to John, the hot shots, 99,000 higher than year-to-date budget.
Yep.
That's crazy. They better not go anywhere. That's what I said. Hopefully they stay around.
Can you explain a little bit of what hot shots do, or what they?
You want to take this, April?
Oh, sorry.
Well, it's a lot of kids running around playing sports, playing the sports ball.
Yes, they do. They're one of our independent contractors that do a lot of the youth sports programs. And when our gymnastics program was on the decline, they're the ones that took over and did some of the activities in the gymnastics studio. And if you notice in the recreation report, the gymnastics program is now at a 0. So they've phased out, and they took over all the classes. So they're really booming. There were some people that were nervous about that, but our registration, even for gymnastics, is higher. So they're definitely out there and doing a lot of new and different things. A lot at South Park.
What other sports do they do?
They do they do some youth pickleball as part of their rotation. T-ball, soccer. The Nerf. Yeah.
Have you gotten positive feedback then on this? So we switched from what we had before to them for gymnastics?
Yes, and we've received positive feedback. Mm-hmm. And it was a very smooth transition.
That's great.
Heard from several people.
I just saw the teen camp positive.
Yeah.
experience, and as the mother of a 13-year-old, it's nice that you have some place, because that's in the loophole, right? They can't work yet, but they're not little. But you don't want them like staring at their phones or playing video games all summer, so forces them. So there must be an appetite for people wanting to get their teens out of the house for the summer.
Well, I like to highlight the teen stuff because it's not just that there's an appetite. The parents have the appetite, but when it's going so well, it means we're doing something right because the kids are there.
Yeah, they would gripe if
right?
they didn't like.
Yeah. So I always like to find little things in the numbers like that.
Yeah, no, I like your little things that you find.
I think we appreciate the stories behind the numbers.
Yes, 100%.
Thank you.
Thank you for putting in the fireworks expenses.
You're welcome. I know you asked about that. So sorry it took an extra month. We were just making sure we had everything come in.
I have another quick question. It looks like, so there's more capacity for the solar program?
Yes.
So what accounts are we adding then?
So we will not be adding any locations, but we will be making all of the locations at their full capacity, I think, by the end. So what U.S. Solar has a few more plots for us, and that will, so we'll have Wildwood at full capacity, the fitness center at full capacity, South Park, Prospect Park. What am I missing? Main Park.
Okay.
So yeah, so they have
Get
enough that
Ivory
will.
ice rink at full capacity.
Well, that has other solar conversations too.
I know,
so,
I know it's a big energy user.
but yeah, this was really great when they contacted us, and so we're just going back and forth a little bit with the agreement. But U.S. Solar has been great to work with. So hopefully, at the next board meeting, I'll be able to bring you a memo about that.
Cool.
And seeing the credits is cool too.
Yeah, it is, and it's something we share with Lauren for sustainability, so she knows what's happening. So it's great.
I'd like to thank you and the staff for putting in more descriptions of the purchase cards.
You're very
appreciate
welcome.
that.
Thank you for your patience while we got everything worked out.
Fine.
Karen, I had one question about the preliminary cash positions report.
Mhm.
So it's dated 8/31. You also had a bond mature on 8/31. Is the bond included in this, or is
No,
that
it's not.
extra?
I made a note on that because that was the holiday weekend.
Mhm.
It didn't actually
the third.
mature until the Tuesday.
So there's actually, for today, for the Fifth Third Bank cash, it's a lot. Would it be like 5 million higher than what you're showing here?
It's about, I think the total was about six.
Six.
That matured.
Okay.
Yeah, but I didn't want to mess up the
No,
date,
no,
so I kept.
dates on the report are correct. I'm just,
Yeah.
now that it's the middle of September.
Correct, yes. So you'll see that in the September report.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other questions?
All right. Okay. Approval of account expenditure list. All right. I move to approve the payment of expenditures in the total amount of $3,882,801.33.
Second.
Thank you. Any comments?
Is this the biggest ever?
It's it's pretty big, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and then I figured out you can't write checks over $999,999.
Well, we can't enter them in MSI over that. We have to do separate line items. So Commissioner Bendy asked about that for one of the checks to White. So poor Mary Beth has to enter it several lines when they're that big.
At least it was only one check and not like
Yes.
a million checks.
Mhm.
Okay. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Commissioner Halting?
Yes.
Commissioner Leduc?
Aye.
Commissioner Metza?
Yes.
Commissioner Bendy?
Yes.
Commissioner Bowe?
Yes.
Commissioner Grau?
Aye. All right, thank you. I will pass it along to Commissioner Leduc for recreation.
And I will turn it over to Superintendent Armour.
Thank you. August programs are in full, or autumn programs are in full swing, starting in August and September, and preschool and at Wildwood and both Main Park are up and running as of the beginning of September. I was going to point out the athletic programs, but we talked about that already. And also, I'm sure everyone noticed the Wildwood visitors are again off the charts. It's so busy over there. It's pretty fun. The Centennial Activity Center had many exciting trips and activities, and their Adventure Camp Week, which was a lot of fun. And it's also the STAR membership renewal time. So the staff is contacting the members regularly to process their renewals and catching them as they come through the center. Lori, as mentioned, she started this weekend. Lori's at the fitness center. She's jumping right in and getting acclimated. She actually was previously a fitness instructor here, so she moved back into Park Ridge, so she's familiar with our programs and the facility, and recognize a lot of the patrons right away also, so that's really nice. You may have noticed the numbers at the fitness center are a little bit higher across the board compared to previous August, and that's attributed to the fact that we had such a short shutdown this time. We've previously had 1 or 2 week shutdowns.
Can I just make a comment about that?
Sure.
It was a bit smelly in there the first week.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
The floor.
yeah, the floor and the carpet, I think.
With like the VOC smell.
It's from the refinishing of the floors.
Maybe not. Maybe we won't do it just 1 week next year.
Yeah, it's really the same time frame for the floor as when we reopen. Usually, there's a required amount of time it takes a while to filter out.
So there's a time that the manufacturer recommends for the off gassing, that it's like a safe space to re-enter. So there's still going to be an odor that persists for some time, but the off gassing to a level of it being safe for people to be in is a certain period of time. It's like a 48-hour time frame.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah, it just takes a while for that odor to
Okay.
get out of there. So
Well, that's good to know,
Kinda
because I've had
kinda
people
stuck with that
ask.
product,
I had
so.
people ask me, and I'm like, oh, I don't know.
yeah, and that's why we do have at least that time frame, and it
Okay.
takes some time to cure, and with the off gassing, but we do follow the manufacturer.
Okay, good to know.
Well, and it was the fitness studio plus the gymnasium this time, and we haven't done the fitness studio in a really long time. So it was a little bit more than usual.
Well, plus the carpet smells too, doesn't it?
The carpet wasn't too bad though. No, I didn't notice
Well,
that.
maybe I was smelling the floor in the hallway.
Yeah, probably. No, the carpet didn't. When they put that down, it didn't have a smell to it. The outdoor pools wrapped up for the summer, so that was exciting. Another successful year, successful audit. Ended with a flick and float because of the weather. We pushed that back, and a very smooth Labor Day weekend. So I wanted to definitely recognize Ethan Williams and Jenna Jezik for leading the aquatics team through another great season. So we're off to the fall. And yes, as John mentioned, please stop by Trucktoberfest. It looks like it's going to be beautiful weather.
Thank you.
I just want to make a comment that, I don't think it's just by chance that we don't have vandalism reports when you look at the amount of attendance that you guys have done such a great job of increasing. Keeping our youth happy, occupied, doing things is one of the keys to keeping things like vandalism and kids out of trouble. And you all should, know that inherently all this hard work you're doing is really helping our community. So thank you.
All right. Are there any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I will now pass it on to Superintendent Bo for Buildings and Grounds.
Okay, and I will turn it over to Superintendent Wolf.
Great, thank you. My report is on page 36. As Executive Director Shea mentioned, Oakton is moving along very well. As you can see, we do have just a kind of a snapshot of the overall financials of the project so far. As a reminder, we do have a GMAX there, so we have no anticipation of going over budget, but just so you can see how the money is moving there currently. But, we're still tracking under budget, but we do have some outstanding things there with IDOT and, some other decisions and ideas that we have moving forward. We did talk through a few of them as far as like an elevator access to the mezzanine, and a few other things like the metal facade that we've decided to move forward with, just based on our current pricing. So as you can see, the concrete flooring for the ice rink was placed. So it was a busy day for them on the day that was laid, but they were glad that they didn't have to stick around until 8 o'clock or later. They said on some of those concrete pour days, because you have to just stay until it's done, it could be a really, really late day, but everything went smoothly and they were out of there on a timely fashion. So that was good to see. So.
Does the refrigerant go in there or on?
Yeah, so what you'll see in that top picture is that's actually metal rebar on the top, but then some of the lines that you see running kind of vertically away from you is the refrigerant lines. They're actually black, like PVC type lines. And then right around where there's that, you can see some pieces of plywood there, and there's kind of a grayish area just past that that's kind of cutting across the rink. That's the trench where there's like the main trunk for the refrigerant lines, and then everything loops back into that. So that's where everything runs. It's ammonia, yep. Yeah, and then that heads off into the mechanical room, and then the studio rink has the same scenario being placed. So, yep. Yeah, and so that's just below the surface of the concrete there. So that's moving along very well. I do want to highlight something on the South Park OSLAD. I do mention that we came across some unidentified sewers because, gosh, wouldn't it be a nice project to not have some unidentified sewers? Yeah, fortunately, we have already worked our way through MWRD, and they did agree that it was a field change. So since the date of this report, we have got the okay from MWRD to proceed, and the contractor has already begun moving forward with that work. We don't know the financial implications of these changes just yet, but at the very least, we're moving the project forward, so that's good. They're actually out there forming and pouring concrete curbing for the playground area today, and they've gotten word as of today that they expect the playground to be delivered on October 4th. So they're plugging forward, and they're telling us as of today they think they will be getting that playground installed and completed this year. So we're keeping fingers crossed for good weather so that we can continue on that path. But again, it's all weather dependent, and if the weather changes for the worst, that could change quickly. So, but that's what we're hearing as of today.
Can I ask a question?
You can as many questions as you'd like.
So it's just a manhole. Like, we knew the line was there. No, it's like an extra line we didn't know there, and the access to it. Okay.
Yeah, we actually learned some things about that sewer system the city wasn't aware of. They didn't have on their maps. It was routed in a way that we didn't expect, and we actually found an open graded manhole cover that had raw sewage at the bottom of it in one spot in our park that we have to rectify. So, like, a couple of things that were installed there that were just like, how did that ever happen? So, yeah.
That's how you shut down more questions.
So the good news is I mean, when that was being uncovered and figure out, there was like
you knew what you found.
Well, there were some people like going, "Wow, this is like like not like really nervous about what the outcome was going to be," but we got through it quite smoothly, which is shocking considering how long it can take sometimes with MWRD. So
Maybe they figured they owed us. They do.
Any idea what decade that originated?
Well, I know the facility was constructed in 1968, so, but I don't I don't know. I mean, some of the sewers that we had the sewers now mapped. We had to clean out and like camera portions that we could. We found a section of sewer that was completely clogged. We're gonna have to dig out and replace. We have a few new things. We have to put in some new catch basins. So we definitely have some expense coming our way with this, but it's unclear. But my guess is some of them are probably, most of that's probably original to the property. So probably dates back to 1968.
What was there before?
It was there was another pool in that area before, so like it was always like a pool and I think a playground in that area, but I know there was just a different pool, the existing pool location that was shaped very similar to the existing pool. It was just an octagon before with a little more depth versus a zero depth entry. But I don't know how far out it went, but it's just yeah. So, so. Yeah, so moving along on that. I also want to thank our staff and give a shout out to our staff for all their hard work with all the field lining. You know, we every year we do a lot of athletic field lining, and you know, this year we had some feedback and some conversations and communication with some of our affiliate groups this fall. And through that process, we really identified and shared with them that it takes our staff 6 weeks of lining and like marking out and measuring for our fall athletic program. And it's really, when you think about that, an extraordinary amount of time to line out and measure all the different soccer fields, football fields, baseball fields, lacrosse fields, and everything that we have to do. So it's something that's just, you know, when you think about, there's generally 2 people that have to do that. And then once they start doing that, they have to go back and keep lining the ones they already measured and then keep lining new ones and keep going back. So it just becomes this ongoing puzzle. And then at some point they end up spending 3 days a week just lining and lining and lining and lining, and that's all they do. So it just really, really kind of set in on me how much of a process it is to keep all these kids busy and in the parks and not vandalizing. And so I think it's, you know, it's great, and it's a huge task, but it just is a monumental task. And so we're looking at different ways to manage that next year or future years possibly. But nonetheless, it's quite a task and a process every year. And I think what they did is pretty amazing every year. So finally, I think in my report, I do want to bring to your attention on page 40, the rude graphic that I've created to talk about the land swap with, well, crude, maybe. Crude, I guess, is the right word. I hand drew it digitally. At Northwest Park and Franklin School, the purple line is the existing property boundary. As you recall, that area shaded in blue was an area that we gave them temporary easement on during their recent construction project. They have reestablished it and given it back to us for park use. But we really, because of its location, just never really program or use it. And most people don't realize that it's not actually school district property because of where it's at. The size of that area is approximately 1 acre. The area below, highlighted in yellow, is an area that encompasses about half of our football field and obviously one baseball, softball field, field number 13. We've had in the past issues where we were unable to fully treat that area for a grub infestation. And so we had half the field treated with our beneficial nematodes, and we were able to take care of managed grubs, and the other half was completely destroyed and almost unusable because we were not, because we have a difference in how we're able to manage and apply lawn care applications. So there's some challenges there.
Can I just tell you, they did pass something. They've changed their lawn care.
Yeah, and I'm in communication with Noel, and we talk about that. In fact, I know what they're using, and he checked what some of the things they're using now with me. So I give him guidance on that frequently. But what we have talked about is just the overall, these two areas. And so, the idea was that, they might find more beneficial use of the area shaded in blue. And, it would make more sense if we had control over the athletic fields to, make adjustments as we saw fit. Now, as in with other areas that we have in the park district, we do maintain areas that we allow the school to use for school programming and gym classes and things like that. We would anticipate and expect that similarity if we were to, entertain a land swap. But we had this discussion a number of years ago, and so we had asked during a recent meeting if they were interested in continuing that conversation, and they had indicated that they were. So they're actually bringing this up to their respective board tonight at their meeting as well. So just to kind of let each of our boards know, to gauge and see if there's any interest, questions, concerns about the idea of moving forward with any discussions at a staff level. So from our perspective, we're seeking a 2-acre parcel for a 1-acre parcel. So, I don't know if they think that would be, just an even swap, or if they would think they'd want something else for it. If so, that might, sour the deal or not. But, just from a discussionary purpose, I think just to see where the board sits with this. I think it was maybe mentioned briefly in some other context a few years ago. But. Any other questions, comments, thoughts?
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Yeah. So if we swap, will we still be maintaining everything, the blue and the?
Yeah, we already maintain the vast majority of the school properties. Everything, like, that's their field areas. And so, like, what we don't maintain on this map is anything from the building up towards Manor. That's all theirs to maintain. We maintain everything else out here as it is anyway. So that's just part of our use agreements with them, so that we have extra acreage to have programming and things like that across the district. So.
Sounds good.
Right. Other than that, I'd be happy to answer any other questions there were on my regular board report.
I have a question.
Yes.
What's up with the water feature at Main Park? Like, it says the installation of the riverbed is still not functioning properly. So, like, what's wrong?
Yeah. So when it was installed, they didn't install it to the same aesthetic that was expected. And it also doesn't have the right pitch and grade. So it doesn't, the water doesn't flow down quite the way that it was anticipated to. So it doesn't meet the specifications, and the contractor understands and agrees with that. So they owe us a replacement.
Are the pebbles supposed to be bigger?
The pebbles are supposed to be more pronounced and more abundant.
Yeah.
It looks like someone poorly went out there and just shoved a couple. Yeah. So
when I first looked at it, I was like,
yeah, so it has two different issues. One, aesthetics. Two, it has to pool and puddle too much at the top before it reaches a crest and then works its way down slowly. And it's and it was supposed to be a little bit more of a chute too, like a flume. Yeah.
okay.
So there was a couple different issues with it that they understand now that we were able to increase the water flow and get the pump on, and we could show it in a better fashion with them. So what we've been doing is working with our architect to give them better direction and talking through how they're going to execute that and like what it should look like so that they have a clear understanding. And we'll be working with April's team just to talk about when would be the best time frame to try to accomplish that, obviously keeping in mind the weather that we need to do the work.
So is it supposed to technically have enough volume in it that, say, a kid could put his toy boat in it and it would float down?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Exactly.
I had a child who once.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
A small little toy boat, not a big one. But
Yeah,
yes.
no,
Yeah, so
Thank you.
we're
I always
looking to
wondered what the
resolve that.
intended look of it was supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for the Main Park inventory that you're working on. The invasive species inventory.
Yeah, so we're actually working on what we're actually doing there is we're actually working towards applying for a grant that's become available that Lauren's identified. That would be a 50-50 match for the offsetting the cost of removal of invasive species. So we identified Main Park as a good opportunity there. So she and I had a meeting today to talk through, and what we're going to do next is identify how much we think it'll cost. And then what we're thinking right now is that we've already have money planned for like tree trimming, as we always do in our annual budget. And so as to not burden the budget, depending on how much it was, we might just utilize some of that funding to go towards our 50%, but we'll see where that money comes out and see what makes sense there. So
That's great.
Yeah.
Kim will be real excited. Kim Miller.
Yeah.
Friends.
Right.
They have yearly tay-to-tays.
Yeah, so it really just kind of came out of nowhere, something that she found like a few weeks ago, and we kind of started to look at it. We weren't even sure what it was until the other day. She went out there, she met with one of the staff, and then she called me today to really kind of talk through what it was, because she was not fully familiar with it until she had this, and then that it was like the 50-50 match for the whole thing. And okay, like I thought it was just going to be like, oh, we'd get maybe a certain amount and we'd be able to get started with it, and so we'd have to work with everybody to decide where and how we would get that started. And it was like, oh,
Is it for replacement too, or just removal?
just removal. So there might be areas that we'll have to think about, like we have a few shoreline areas towards the east pond that I would imagine we'd want to get something else planted there right away, so that we have some shoreline stabilization. It's not just bare dirt. So there's a secondary consideration there as well. But so
Great.
Yep.
So Terry, I totally hear you on the lining of the baseball fields, because as a volunteer coach for softball, I have played on and coached on the Park Ridge, but I've also volunteered in another local town where the coaches are the ones who have to do the lining. Now, the coaches, when they have to do it, those lines aren't straight. Yours, when I would show up at Park Ridge's field, looked gorgeous. So I totally hear it's a lot of work. It shows. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, moving on to change order for South Park. In relation to the South Park project, I move to accept the facts set forth in the staff memorandum and move and approve change order number 1 in the amount of $75,440 to Albright Construction, and to authorize the executive director to execute and deliver such change order. Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion?
It does. So just so that we're clear, this is a little more than what we had budgeted in the capital budget, but we do have money available in our paving and lighting fund. This is appropriate use of that fund. That's what it's for. It's for the maintenance and repairs of our asphalt and lighting systems. And so that's how we're going to balance this budget out. We're going to utilize the contractor that's on site doing asphalt work. Once this is approved, we're going to continue the conversation and coordination with them to make sure that we do the least disruptive path to the programming needs of April's team that we can to get the work done, but get it done as efficiently as possible. So,
Do you think it'll get done this year?
that's our goal. Yep.
Any other comment? Roll call?
Commissioner Leduc?
Aye.
Commissioner Matza?
Yes.
Commissioner Bendy?
Yes.
Commissioner Bowe?
Yes.
Commissioner Halting?
Yes.
Commissioner Grau?
Aye.
And that passes. And a discussion of Centennial Activity Center pool joint replacement bid. Terry?
Yes, thank you. So we do have a bid out right now for the replacement of the joints in the pool at the lap pool. A lot of pools are traditionally the joints between the large sections of concrete are just caulk joints. With our pools, it's a large piece of like foam rubber with a rubberized cap over the top. We've had problems with this product that was installed in those pools since the year it was installed, and it's been a various different level of problems and issues every year, almost every year. We have had a lot of vandalism with these, where the kids would, while they're swimming, it's got enough pliability and softness that they can poke their fingers and peel away at sections of it, et cetera, et cetera. So we finally last year found a solution to resolve this, and that we replaced that joint with the product that's there, but then found a product that we can put over it that they can't get through. And it's the same type of a membrane liner that they use for like underground, like water detentions, probably what's in our water reservoir for like drinking water. And it has like a 50, 60-year life expectancy. It's extremely durable, resilient, etc. So we completed that process with the leisure pool last year. We had hoped to get it completed before the spring this year, but just didn't work out, didn't have the time. So we're looking to complete the work here this fall. So we had money in the budget, but we came to understand that it probably would exceed what we had in the budget. We had savings on the Hinckley project, which we've transferred over and expect to use to complete this project here this fall. So we're just out to bid right now, letting you know what the project is, so that when we bring the bids to be approved at the next meeting, we'll have a better understanding of what that is, and we can just talk numbers at that point. So, any questions?
Do you have an idea of how much?
It seemed like we were only going to be about $10,000 or $15,000 over budget. We did also have to bring on, because of the fact that we got over to the point of needing to bring it out to bid, we had to hire an engineer to draw everything up. Last year we were just under the bid amount, and so what we did is we worked with an engineer to draw up what we had done there and put that to paper. So now we had it in paper. So it's the cost of having to go out to bid sometimes. So
no, fine.
Yep.
Okay, and moving on to our new used Ford F-350. I move to ratify Nunc Pro Tunc, the action of the executive director authorizing the purchase of the used 2022 Ford F-350 with an odometer reading of 233 miles from the White Bear Lincoln in the amount of $44,795. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Sounds like a deal.
Yeah, I have to, hats off to our Fleet 4 person, Kramer. He was diligently looking and tracking and chasing down multiple different vehicles. He had probably 10 different vehicles in the Chicagoland-ish area that he was keeping an eye on. And that he was going back and forth on, and one that he was like, oh, we should jump on this, and then it disappeared. And he was kind of, back and forth, and then he found this one. He was like, I'm kind of thinking about this one, but, it's all the way up in Minnesota. And so we talked about it back and forth a little bit, and, it was $10,000 less than everything else he was seeing. And the reason was because it was a 2022 model year, but it had 233 miles on it. Because it was, titled out, it was technically used, even though it was only used for them to take like measurements and specifications by Ford Motor Company. And White Bear Lincoln picked it up from them, like at a factory auction or whatever, so that they had on their lot, and it just was sitting there, and he just got lucky and found it. So, so it was great. So he took a drive up there, did a test drive, made sure there wasn't anything squirrely with it, because it was just, raising an eyebrow, but it was definitely worth it. And I appreciate the fact that he was diligent and dedicated and looking, and got us some savings. It's been delivered. We're just waiting for the flatbed to come in. We've got that ordered, and then it'll be sent in to get that mounted once that comes in, and then our salt spreader will get attached, and then in the summertime we'll have our water tank on there, and it'll be our two uses for that vehicle going forward. So thank you for the ability to get that vehicle. That's the first vehicle we've purchased now actually got received in probably 2.5, 3 years now. And I've got purchase orders executed on vehicles since July of 2023 that they can't even give me a date of manufacture for. So thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Any other discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Matza,
Yes.
Commissioner Bendy,
Yes.
Commissioner Bo,
Yes.
Commissioner Halting,
Yes.
Commissioner Leduc,
Aye.
Commissioner Grau.
Aye.
That passes. And in relation to disposal of surplus property, I move to approve ordinance number 24-6, an ordinance authorizing the sale of used personal property owned by the Park Ridge Park District.
Second.
Discussion? Much needed?
It's just, we got a replacement mower. We no longer have a need for this mower, obviously, so we're just looking to put it up on surplus so we can dispose of it, so.
Okay, any other discussion? Thank you. Roll call.
Commissioner Bendy,
Yes.
Commissioner Bo,
Yes.
Commissioner Halting,
Yes.
Commissioner Leduc,
Aye.
Commissioner Matza,
Yes.
Commissioner Grau.
Aye.
All right, we move on to policy. Commissioner Matza got some work.
Exciting. Got two different policy manuals to review tonight and go over. I'm going to read some motions and then we'll turn it over to the staff. First policy is I move to approve an amendment to section 1.07, filing petitions for commissioners' elections of the Park of Commissioners Internal Policies and Bylaws Manual as presented. I have a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. Attorney Rice, do you want to?
This is just a matter of housekeeping. It's really just keeping up with the fact that they changed the election cycle time periods and timing. So it's really just keeping up with the code.
Are there any questions?
Staff's gonna like the new schedule, right?
Yeah, no more Christmas Day.
That was the worst. Mary Ann's probably like, what the hell?
Sorry, Mary Ann.
Now's our time to wave to Mary Ann.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, the number of the old schedule used to result in things like hearings on the day before Thanksgiving, Christmas Eve. It was insanity. So this was nice of them to do.
Anyone else? Mary Beth, roll call, please.
Commissioner Bo,
Yes.
Commissioner Halting,
Yes.
Commissioner Leduc,
Aye.
Commissioner Matza,
Aye.
Commissioner Bendy,
Yes.
Commissioner Grau.
Aye.
Next up is the drone section. All right. I move to approve the amendment to section 2.01 of ordinance 18-3 aircraft/model aircraft of the conduct ordinance to include the use of drones as presented.
Second.
Thank you very much. Attorney Price?
So drones is a very popular hobby. Unmanned aircraft systems, as they're also known, is a very popular hobby. It was the second most popular Christmas gift just before pandemic. People need a place to fly them. So on one hand, part of the mission of the Park District is to provide open spaces for people to do things that need open spaces. On the other hand, they're creepy. They have cameras, and people have their first flights, and they don't go according to Hoyle, as they say. So there's a conflict there between how they're and where they're used, and so forth. So flying them over aquatics facilities is creepy. You want to do that. Well, in Illinois, because Illinois believed it was going to be a super highway pioneer for commercial use of drones to deliver pizzas and Amazon packages, which they still believe, they passed a law that said no unit of local government could do anything about it. Meanwhile, there's a Supreme Court case that says every property owner is entitled to use the property and airspace they use, and the FAA can't preempt them out of it. So that's a great rule. Obviously, it's different for a farmer than it is for the Willis Tower. You're using a different amount of your own airspace. So to try and rectify some of this, park districts, and we have a couple of clients who build parks specifically for people on various spectrums who don't like stimulus. parks were created, dedicated to people with sensory issues to try and make it inviting for them. Can you imagine if a drone's hanging around in a park that's devoted to trying to minimize sensory issues? And they didn't care. They actually told the Illinois legislature, some of these drone lobbyist groups, our rights to fly drones in your parks are greater than our First Amendment rights. All of that conflict led to a new legislation that IAPD passed that recognizes the authority of the park district to control its airspace. So Illinois has finally got on board with doing it. We had tried to do some of it here already. This now brings us into conformity with what the statute says, which is that we can control the first 150 feet above ground level for our purposes, and that's what we've done. We're now exercising our right to control that. We're reaffirming that all the federal guidelines about how these things get used by hobbyists have to be followed. The problem there is there's nobody to report a violation to, or there wasn't. There is now. We have some teeth now in preventing drones from flying over playgrounds where there are little kids, or over large gatherings of people, or all the other things that are in the guidelines. And at above 150 feet, the superhighway for your pizza can still exist. This brings us into conformity with the statute and accomplishes our goal of trying to balance the various users who use our park spaces.
So pizzas would be dropped on us from 150 feet up?
If you order one, yes.
From a park.
Well, if you order one to be delivered to a park. Yeah. Because the legislation specifically says we can't countermand any IDOT rules. Now, IDOT promised to pass rules 12 years ago, so I'm not really holding my breath. But if IDOT says you can deliver a pizza to a park with a drone, so be it.
Any questions for staff?
No, I mean, I think this makes a lot of sense, particularly since we do have a lot of very young users in our parks, and we don't want creepers sending drones over them.
Anyone else? I had a question. It doesn't ban them outright completely, right? I think there's a mechanism where they can apply for a permit from the executive director. Okay, good.
Yeah, very popular.
I had a question. The paragraph C lists also cars and boats in addition to aircraft.
Well, that's a holdover from what we used to have. We have RC-controlled cars and little things that run around, and those are somewhat of a conflict. We're going to talk about conflicts in a minute on the next one. But those motorized things get to be conflicts with people who are walking dogs or with little babies.
Yeah.
So that's a holdover. That's not new. That's just been reincorporated in the new section.
Okay. I was just thinking about like some kid with a battery, like a remote control car or something like that, not like a adult with one of those ones that goes like super fast.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, this is to make sure that this is done in a place where it's not interfering with other people.
Yeah. Okay. Just as long as the law doesn't come for a 4-year-old in his remote control car.
All right, Mary Beth, you want to do a roll call?
Commissioner Halting?
Yes.
Commissioner Leduc?
Aye.
Commissioner Metza?
Yes.
Commissioner Bendy?
Yes.
Commissioner Bowe?
Yes.
Commissioner Grau?
Aye.
All right, thank you. And last policy of the night, I move to approve the addition of section 3.17, use of power-driven mobility devices other than wheelchairs, and section 3.18, use of mobility devices to the conduct ordinance number 18-3 as presented. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Attorney Price.
So the first part, the essential banning of electric scooters, is done in recognition of their unique attributes and also the manner in which legislation was passed. They were recently added by the Illinois legislature to the Illinois Vehicle Code. And accordingly, that implicates some tort immunities about where vehicles can and can't be. IAPD fought for saying, all right, well, if we can regulate where these low-speed vehicles can go, we need to preserve the tort immunity by saying that not every place is intended for them to be operated safely. That, like other vehicles, they need to be operated properly on roadways. And plaintiffs' lawyers and the lobby opposed that. They didn't want to allow the tort immunity to be preserved. So the consequence of that is that we would then have the duty to make sure every place in the park system was suitable and safe for this to be operated, because the idea that the tort immunity, it's not where we're intending you to use it, being gone, we'd have to then say every place is safe, since we can no longer ban them in that sense, unless we ban it entirely. So the first section takes them at their word. Fine, you can't run electric scooters in the park system because they have smaller wheels. They can go at high speeds, as much as 40 miles an hour. They are typically, as the gentleman spoke, operated by minors. So a minor on tiny wheels at 40 miles an hour, we all know our parks, the idea that they are hazard-proof or trip-proof or pothole-proof for that kind of activity is an insane burden that the Terry's folks would never be able to achieve. Not if you tripled the number of people who are doing it. So that's why electric scooters are being banned from the park system. The village has to determine whether they're going to allow them on streets at all as low-speed vehicles. That's for the village to decide. So that's the first part. We're taking that up. Unless somebody has an ADA prescription for an electric scooter, because that exception we have to make, a reasonable accommodation where it's required by ADA, but that would require a doctor giving somebody a prescription essentially for a scooter as opposed to any other mobility device. They would be banned, and for that reason. As for the other micromobility devices, again, these are popular things like, we're not coming for your 4-year-old, and people like to have some of these things, whether they're hoverboards or whatever. We're trying to put some bumpers around the boundaries here for how they're used. And so, again, accepting all ADA stuff, we've taken up the micromobility devices, and since they seem to invent new ones every Christmas holiday season, we've tried to give it a larger description as opposed to specific ones, and then take them from there. And that includes e-bikes. And there are the 3 classes of e-bikes. There's the one with the pedal assist. They don't go any faster than 20 miles an hour. They require you to actually be riding a bike, essentially. Class 2 is no faster than 20 miles an hour, but it's got the hand throttle. And those have led to a number of problems in forest preserves and park districts across the system. IAPD has been sort of collecting data about that. But at the moment, the trend is to allow more park districts or forest preserves allow Class 2 on their trails. Nobody's allowing Class 3. Class 3 is the electric motorcycle that can go 80, 90 miles an hour. And if you've been in our parks and you see people walking their dogs, the idea of leashes and 60 miles an hour and kids and bikes, it's not a happy mix. So sharing the trails, we've made some decisions here to say it's Class 1 bikes and when and not after sunset, recognizing the conflicts that speed of these things can increase the number of conflicts, so to speak. So that's what all this is about. And previously, we didn't really address these electric micromobility devices. We addressed the gas-powered ones, which were creating conflicts. Now we're joining up with the electric ones.
Are there any questions?
I do have a question. So I think it's just the categories I'm not getting. When I got to B, I think it was B when it said after dark. The after dark. So what was allowed before dark? Like, I thought they were all not allowed ever, and then there was the after dark exception. So what am I missing? I gotta find it.
Well, let's see.
I think
Class 1s are allowed only. Where are you looking? Electric bicycles.
Under A, where it says common examples include 1, electric bikes,
No, I
Oh.
Commissioner Grau's right. There is one in here about after dark.
Yeah, and so I thought they were all being banned, so I think I did not see that there was an exception.
Let's see, G.
No person shall operate electric bike on district property between 30 minutes after sunset and 30 minutes before sunset.
Sunrise.
Sunrise,
Yeah.
sorry. Can't be sunset twice, can it?
Yeah, so your class 1 electric bike can operate if you have a light, blah, blah, blah. So yes, the class 2s and 3s are banned. And let's see,
They need a light if they're operating.
and then to be in between when it's dark out, that you need to be lit.
Isn't that the law too for regular bikes, technically? That they have to have a light? I know people don't do it, but I thought regular bikes, that was also,
I'm not sure of that.
might be ordinance in Park Ridge or something, that they're required to have lights.
Okay, so the ones are okay,
Ones are okay, class 1s are okay.
and after dark, they have to have light.
And the reason we didn't pick up regular bikes here is because they don't go as fast. I mean, if you're right, the Peloton bike rider
So
guys, they can go
shouldn't
that.
it say class 1 electric bike? Because we're banning class 2 and 3. But,
Well, electric bikes are all 3 classes, but we are banning 2 and 3.
right, but in G, you're not making that distinction.
Well, because it already says that class 2 and class 3.
Yeah, it's an incorporated definition, but we can add it in the final.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where I got confused, I think. So there,
We can make that a class 1 electric bicycle.
okay,
We send it to the website and to, we don't publish
and there
it.
was a tiny little typo on the very first 3.17, 3.17, it's cart or is one word, go kart or.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, oh, is there something new
There's
that
a space there.
Yeah, just tiny.
Third line. All right. Okay.
Anyone else? Comments? Questions?
So the motion's to approve is amended.
Yeah, I'm glad we're doing this as a procedural issue. How effective do we think it's gonna, an ordinance is gonna be?
The good news is we have an awesome relationship with the village and the police department. And that's what we're gonna rely on to enforce these kinds of things. So, the idea that we're gonna catch somebody going by 25 miles an hour on a class 2 electric or a class 3 electric bike, probably not. But community's tight enough, I think, that we would know that it was, Robert Bowe out there on his class 3 bike again, let's turn him in. And then as a repeat offender, we could.
Well, it's all over the social media, and the parents are trying to figure out who's doing it because their toddlers are
Right.
in harm's way. I don't know that they're successfully figuring it out, but
Right, but once we have an identity, and the kind of way we work with most complaints is we reach out, we try to say, hey, can we stop? And if we don't get cooperation, then we take it up a level and try and do an ordinance violation that you now have the power. Now it's in that form you can do.
they're terror. They're really bad.
Anyone else? I had a question. Are you helping other park districts do something similar?
The IEPD sent out an alert about the electric scooters, so everybody's involved on that. And then Class 3 e-bikes were very popular last holiday season, and they've become difficult. So just an apocryphal story, my daughter just graduated from the University of Oregon, got her master's there. Eugene had allowed all of these things. The electric scooters didn't last 8 months before they banned them because they caused so many conflicts with pedestrians, pets, automobiles. They're gone. And those were even the rental ones. You slap your card on the top and you can rent an electric scooter. All of them are banned because it was, and Eugene's pretty open-minded and liberal about all that kind of stuff. So they're a real issue. They're fun and exciting, but they create conflict. So yeah, this is a hot topic.
What about signage, just to let people know the rules?
Well, so when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. As a lawyer, I'm here to tell you, you don't have to sign to enforce this, but that's not what communications does, right? We want to make people's experience in the park as happy and joyful as possible, and an unwelcome surprise would be I didn't know. Now, I can tell you that we can put up all the signs we want, and people will still disobey them, and that'll be true. But we do need to make an education effort. And so what I've been encouraging all the districts to do is be strategic about a couple of signs that electric bikes, class, if it's not a pedal e-bike, it's banned. Electric scooters are banned. And I don't know how you want to do that. I leave that to you and your community. But there should be some things on the website about, we've passed some new micro-mobility device regulations, be advised. And so there's a community outreach to be done. And there should be some signs at some strategic points. And I would say it's the same place you have the signs that say, reminding everybody, no handguns, in your parks. You already have those signs at certain entrances and things. That's a place to put and then if you've got somewhere on a trail that is a frequent source of complaints on your complaint line about conflicts between bicycle riders and pedestrians and dogs, and we all seem to track that kind of data, that might be a place for a sign.
Margaret, Terry, and I have already had discussions about signage and replacement. We've also talked about this topic regarding e-bikes and e-scooters with the city and the police department, because we ran into some issues this year with our park ambassadors. They highly encouraged us to have a policy so at least could refer to it, that we had something updated, so hence why it came here right away. So we've already had some discussions. This will be impacted to our budget and redoing signs. We've already had this discussion of doing it. We'll maybe do something different. We could post that new policy's been updated so people have it on our website, and we'll go from there. But wheels are already in motion, leaning towards educating the public on this.
Nice pun.
You like it?
I have a clarification question. So these dirt bikes, these dirt bikes that some of the boys are getting now, I'm seeing, I don't know if they're gas or electric, or some of them are electric and some of them are gas. Are those? It's in
P is the last item on the thing. It still says gas powered, propane powered.
Okay, so anything gas powered is disallowed.
Yes.
Yes.
I just wanted to.
It's the last item.
I believe those new dirt bikes are electric, but they're hand throttled, so they would not be our class 1. So it automatically goes to class 2.
Okay,
so that would be
the hand throttle.
Yeah, that would be banned, right?
Because those are getting more popular.
Yes.
All of a sudden, I'm like, what's these?
I see kids coming down.
Ride a real bike.
I catch kids coming down Talcott on them.
No, they're becoming more
From out of the
popular.
neighborhood.
I just started
They
seeing
scoot 2 blocks.
popping
no
around
plate,
this
no helmet.
summer. Okay, thank you.
Anything else? No? All right.
Bicycle park.
Mary Beth, can we get a roll call on the motion as amended, please?
Yes. Commissioner Bowe?
Yes.
Commissioner Halting?
Yes.
Commissioner Leduc?
Aye.
Commissioner Metza?
Aye.
Commissioner Bendy?
Yes.
Commissioner Grau?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Attorney Price, for keeping us up to date and helping us reduce liability in the parks. And that concludes policy, and I'll turn it over to President Grau for intergovernmental.
Okay. Commissioner Tunnell didn't give me any work to do, so I think we're okay. Communications and correspondence, do we have any? No. All right, new business. Any new business? Oh, Marianne? Oh, what? See? Marianne's watching us. Hi, Marianne. Oh, stop. New business. If any other commissioners interested in going to IPRA, let myself or John know. Nothing else? All right. I move to adjourn this meeting. It is 8:50.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're done.